Welcome to our webinar on midsegments, the 5.4 midsegment theorem of triangles. And so this video should be watched before March 15th, because that's when the day in class that we'll be doing this. So a couple things that we need to be able to do. This is why the in is here, so I'd like you to try them on your own, and then you can watch it and see how it's done. So first thing for problem number 1, they're asking us to find the midpoint. And midpoint, if you remember, is x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So we will get an address for this because it's an ordered pair, the x's and the y's. It's an address when I plug these in. So x's added together would be 5 plus negative 3 divided by 2. And the y's added together would be 8 plus negative 4 divided by 2. And if I simplify that, 5 and negative 3 turn into 2. And here I have $8 and I owe somebody 4, so I now have 4. And if I reduce that, the midpoint comes out to be 1, 2. So that is the address of the point that is midway between these two guys, something we need to be able to do today. For problem number 2, they asked us to find the slope, and the slope formula, if you remember, is y1 minus y over x1 minus x. So if I subtract the y's from each other and then subtract the x's and divide them, I will get my slope. Change in y over change in x. So to find my slope now, I subtract my y's. I like to take 11 and subtract away 4. So 11 minus 4. If I divide that by my x's, since I started with the 11, I have to start with the 3. 3 minus the other 3 will give me a slope of, well, 11 minus 4, I believe, is 7. And on the bottom, 3 minus 3 is 0. Fraction you cannot take 7 things and divide it into nothing. Doesn't work that way. So therefore, there is no slope for this problem. That would mean, since there's no slope for this problem, that would mean that we have a vertical line. The only change is the change in the y values, and you're not moving left or right any, so you end up with a vertical line, the 2 points that you chose. So just remember that as we go through this. So then, we have a video up here that you could watch, and it basically is going to go through and explain all the stuff that we're going to do here. If you want another way to look at it, copy this into your web browser and watch it, and it's a very good video. So the segments, basically the midsegment theorem says, and you can go ahead and read it because you need to copy it into your notes, that if I have a midpoint on one side of the triangle, like point D, you can see it's a midpoint because these guys are marked, A and C are marked the same, and then this point is also a midpoint on either side because they're marked the same. Therefore, that this DE, when I draw a line here, is the midsegment if it is parallel to the bottom and parallel to the side opposite it, and it will end up being half the length. So DE would be parallel to AB and half of AB. And that's really all there is to the midsegment theorem. You just need to remember that and you'll be good. So then this one, they kind of go through and ask you to, this is the mentor text on how we're going to find the midsegment. So you need to make sure you get this down in your notes. I'm going to give you probably something in class to have this also. But basically, they're asking you to prove that that MN is parallel to JK and is half as long. So what I do is I first find the midpoint, find the point M, and find the point N. And that's what they did. They used our midpoint formula, subtracted the x's of JL, so negative 2 plus 6, or added them together and divided by 2, because that's what I just said. Add the x's, divide by 2, add the y's, divide by 2. And so then adding my y's together, I have 3 and negative 1, and that's where this came from. And when you reduce these, you end up with 4 over 2, which is 2, and 2 over 2, which is 1. So this ordered pair over here is 2, 1. Then, for the KL side, to find the midpoint, you add the x's together. The 4 and the 6 are our x's. That's where we get this from. And then we add our y's together, the 5 and the negative 1. Well, if we add 4 and 6 together, we get 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. You could count over 5. That would be where n is. And then if you combine these guys together, 5 plus negative 1 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And so there is the ordered pair for my midpoint. So then they went through and found the slope. And the slope of jk, remember they did change in y over change in x. So my y values, they chose the y to be 5, and the other y value is 3, so 5 minus 3. And then the x value, since they started with the 5, you can see they started with the 5 here, they have to start with the x value in that ordered pair, which happens to be 4. So 4 minus negative 2 ends up being, well, remember minus a negative is really adding, so that's how the 6 showed up. So 2 over 6 reduces down to 1/3. So then the slope of mn, they just took the ordered pairs we have here, subtracted the y's, the 2 on top up here minus the 1, and that's how they got the top one. And then 5 take away 2 gave us 3, so it reduced to 1/3. So then they went through the distance formula, to find the two lengths. And basically what I would do, and they simplified it and whatnot, but I'm going to go ahead and do the distance formula for you. So to find jk, the length of it, remember it is the square root with all those x's in there, so it's going to be the two x's subtracted and squared. So I'm going to say 4 take away negative 2 squared plus the y subtracted 5 minus 3 squared. Now remember, for the distance formula, it doesn't matter what order you put the numbers in, you just take the one, you just put them in the best way that works for you, because the squaring and the square rooting will take care of it. It will take care of the signs. So this ends up being 6 squared. So the first part is 6 squared, and the second part ends up being plus 2 squared. Well, a little simplification on this ends up getting me 36 plus 4, which is the square root of 40. So that's the length of jk. So now if I get the square root of 20 for this length, I'm good. That showed, for me, for mn, that would actually show me that the lengths are half the length of the other. So mn ends up equaling, well, that's square root of 10, because 4, square root of 4 is 2, and so that would be 2 times root 10, so that's where we get half. So I'm sorry about that. So if I end up taking my x's and subtracting them from each other, 5 take away 2, and squaring them, and adding on the y's, 2 take away 1, and squaring them, I will end up with, well, 5 take away 2 is 3, so I get 3 squared, plus 2 take away 1 is 1 squared, which ends up being the square root of 10. And so that is half the size of square root of 40, because remember, for a square root of 40, when we simplify underneath a radical, it's 4 times 10, and the square root of 4 is 2, and you end up with 2 root 10, which is double, as you can see, is double the size of root 10. So that's what we're looking for to find when they're asking you to do this. So you're going to have to be able to find the slope, find the midpoints, find the distance of each side. You're going to have to do all of this stuff in this section. So now they're asking us to find UW and RT when we have two different midsegments. And you can see that UW is a midsegment because it breaks this side in half and it breaks that side in half, and therefore it is also parallel to that one. So if I want to find UW, from what I know, from my theorem, it says if I want to find the midsegment UW, it should be 1/2 the side it is parallel to, which happens to be RS. Well, I know that to find UW, if I take half of RS, that would be 12, means that UW has to be 6. Well, same type of thing for the next one. If I want to find RT, I know that VW, which is the midsegment because it's parallel to the RT side, needs to be half the size of RT. Well, this time they didn't give me RT, they actually gave me the midsegment. So I'm going to plug in the midsegment of 8 and set that equal to 1/2 RT. Solving algebraically, well, to get rid of a multiplication by a half, I multiply by 2 on both sides, because 2 times 1/2 is 1. So I'm left with 1 RT is equal to 16. It's supposed to be a 16 here. I don't know why it came out so funny. 16. So that would be our answer, and that's really all we're looking for. Hopefully that works for you. Okay, so then this one, we're asked to find, we're given that these guys inside are midsegments. They want us to find the perimeter of GHJ. So we're going to go through and first figure out what sides are parallel to what sides. So EF, which is this side over here, has a side that is parallel to it, which would be, hopefully you can see, is, I don't even see it down here as a choice, it should be GJ. Alright, so that doesn't even have a choice for that. Alright, so then we have that JH, where's JH? JH should be parallel to DF. Alright, so I can put that up there. That's kind of what I want. And then I should also know that JH, well, JH is this side right here. It should be the same as half the length of this side. Well, remember that G is the midpoint of that side of the triangle. Oh, whoops, I read this first one wrong. We'll come back to that. And so if this side, if this is the midpoint, if G is the midpoint, that would mean that this side over here would also be 8. And if that side is 8, then we know the whole length is 16. And if that whole length is 16, then we end up with a midsegment of 8. So JH should have a midsegment length of 8. It's not parallel, it's equal. So EF, let's go back to EF now. EF is this side right here. It is the full length of the side. That should have a length, since H is the midpoint, should have a length of 21.2. Sorry about that. And DE, which is this side up here, is parallel to which side? Well, it's parallel to GH. And if that's the case, then we already know that this piece right here is 8. We should be able to find the length of GH, which would be half of that, which would be 12. So we have 8 plus 12, and then GJ is half the length of this side, so 8 plus 12 plus 10.6 will give me my area, or the perimeter of the little triangle in the middle, which is what we're trying to find. So 10.6, I can't, I'll just do it on my calculator here, because I can't seem to get it to write on this page. There's too much going on it, so I apologize for that. And so I'm going to take 10.6 plus 8 plus 12, and there is my perimeter. 30.6 is the perimeter of the smaller triangle in there. Now moving on to the next